Hey, how's everyone doing? So I put a web address into the chat. So if you don't have chat open, jump over there. And there's 3 images I'd like you to grab and save to your own images folder in your website folder. So if you just right click on the particular image, so I could right click on navigation sprites, choose, what do I want to choose? On Opera, it looks like it says save linked contact as. Might be save linked as, depends on what browser you're using. Now you could click on it. That'll display the image, and then you could right click on that, and then you could do a save as or save image as or save picture as, depending. So either way. And we're not going to use all of these. In fact, I think I'm probably going to have us use the social icons one image. I was looking for several examples that I might use in class today, and I thought this one looked pretty good. Should be just the right amount of complexity. But then I also saw this little star button one, and I thought that's kind of neat too. And so who knows? But I'm going to talk to you about what these images are. But I would definitely like you to have one so that way you can do the demonstration webpage as well. So grab those. We may not need them right away, but we're definitely going to need them in today's class. Yep, click the link, download the image. Cool. Excuse me. Okay, so got those. Definitely going to work on that. Now I haven't even started up my VS Code yet. So let me go ahead and get that going. Still looking at stuff from a previous time. Let's see, it's JavaScript-y. Let me just close a few things. So I try to get a little organized. I want to be in my 195 folder. You know what? I'm going to start a new page from scratch. I haven't done that in a while. Zoom in a bit. And I'm going to leave my folder open because I do want you to see this. I think what I'm going to have us do first is we are going to end up making 3 web pages that are all controlled by one CSS file. Okay, so however, I'm going to make one web page first and do a lot of the work on there, and then I'm going to copy and paste to make the 2 other web pages. So when I say I'm going to have you make 3 web pages, doesn't mean we're going to be working on 3 at the same time. We're going to make one page, and then we'll copy and paste to make different versions. And basically what I want us to do is to mimic a small multi-page website. So let's see, I'll start, let me just go ahead and save this first. See, I'm going to save this 195. I'm going to call it week 5 dash menu 1.html. So I'm calling it week 5 menu 1.html. Ultimately, I am going to be having a menu 2.html and a menu 3.html. Oh yeah, thanks for yeah, I can't remember if people show up a little bit afterward. Can they scroll back in the chat and see older stuff? So yeah, the address that, okay. Yeah, so the address that Reagan just posted is where I want you to go. And the 3 images I want you to get are the navigation sprites, social icons, and star button. I'll write those down here. Navigation sprites, social icons, and the star button. So basically that address is just in my images folder. And I'll remind you of this once we get to them. What we're doing right now is not utilizing those images. So no worries if you don't have them yet. And if you are showing up a little bit later on, that's okay. We will remind you of where to go to get those images and things. So I'm going to have this menu 1 page. Now let me go ahead and really quick. I'm going to take a moment to type up some basics here. Call it navigation menu effects. I think it's a good name for it. Let's see. Okay. Got a few meta tags on there. I think things are looking pretty good so far. Let's see, can I make this a little smaller? Okay, feel pretty good about that. And I am going to use an external CSS file. And let's see, we'll call it I don't know. How about just good old menu styles.css? Yeah, haven't used that one yet. Okay, that takes care of the head section. I'm going to have a body section. We're not going to have much in the body of these pages, by the way, but in the body of this page, I'm going to have a headline 1, navigation menu effects, nav tag, and I want to do 3 hyperlinks. I think I'm going to throw something a little bit extra at you today. Within our nav, unordered list, and then list items. Okay. I'm going to copy that and paste. I'm going to leave it here for a moment so you can kind of get a visual for what's going on. Excuse me. So, yeah, let me just go ahead and copy that. I'm going to stick that in the chat too. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Looks pretty weird, I know, but I do want you to get some practice with this. We haven't done this yet, but it is what most big websites do, and that is they construct navigation menus using an unordered list. The navigation menu over at the Apple website is constructed this way, using an unordered list. In fact, a lot of the navigation elements on the Apple website are using an unordered list, not just that top bar at the top, but a lot of components. So an unordered list. Now, what's going to be weird about this, and I definitely want you to create this, even though I'm not literally collecting this from you, what we're doing in class today is going to be a tremendous help on your quiz this weekend, your navigation menu quiz. That quiz is going to be quite a bit different than any other quiz you've taken, in that I'm not giving you a bunch of multiple choice questions. Instead, the quiz is going to be task-based, meaning I'm going to describe something for you to create, and you're going to create it based on that description. So starting off here, nothing fancy yet. I've got a web page, just like every other web page we've ever made. I'm linking to an external style sheet, which I have not created yet. And in the body of the page, I have a headline 1. I have a nav, opening and closing nav tags. Within that, I have an unordered list, opening and closing unordered list tags. And within that, I have 3 list items, opening and closing list item tags. And within each of those list items, I have a hyperlink created using the anchor tags, opening and closing anchor tags. Now, the hyper references to these 3 menu items, they go to web pages, one of which exists. The other 2 don't exist yet. That's okay. I'll be getting to those soon enough. And then I just have generic text in there, web page 1, web page 2, web page 3. You got it. Now, if we can create this navigation menu with 3 items, creating it with 4, 5, 7, 10, or 12 Shouldn't be any more difficult. Okay, so that's going to be the HTML so far. We're not 100% done with our HTML, but that takes care of a big part of it. You know what? I will do this too. Let's go ahead and uniquely identify this nav. Main menu. Websites will often have different sets of nav tags, different navigation menus. One of them might be in the header or adjacent to the header. One of them might be in the footer. There could be one in an aside section. I don't believe I've used an aside in class at all these first 5 weeks, the aside element. Hasn't really come up, but I'll try to make a note to make sure that it comes up soon. Okay, so that's the HTML side of things. Don't close that page. I need to open up a CSS file, and I'm going to file save as. I'm going to save this into my 195 styles folder, week 5. Oh no, I didn't call it that. Menu styles.css. Menu styles.css. And that is what I referred to up here. Remember, the file name is not too critical, but it is important that the file name for the CSS matches up with the link tag hyperreference. All right, I think that's good. And of course, the best way to confirm that it's good is a reset rule. Okay, we got that. And then so that I can see what's going on. And I'm going to go ahead and do this too. Let's throw in a couple little new things here. Okay. I don't think I used VH in class yet, but after class on Tuesday, I was working with one of your classmates, and there was a situation where using 100 VHs was, I think, a good way to go. So I want to use it in class as well. Anybody know what a VH is? VH. I think you've seen VWs before, but I don't think I've used a VH in class. You got it, Marshall. Viewport height, Jason, viewport height. Exactly. So the viewport is what we see in the browser. That's kind of like our visible window. It's our viewport. And of course, the viewport width is horizontal, left to right. The viewport height is vertical, top to bottom. So by using some of these measurements, we can kind of size elements based on the user's device. And it doesn't matter if it's a skinny phone device or if it's a widescreen monitor. Now the 100 here is kind of like a percentage. 100% of my viewport height. That's what that means. So if I click the Go Live button, oh, I don't want to do there. I don't want to click the Go Live on my CSS. I need to go back over to my HTML and then click the Go Live. It's the, good question, Jason. It's the browser window height. Yeah, the browser window height, not the actual monitor height. Which is kind of good because that's really what we want to manipulate our web pages to be within, is the browser window, even for a web application. So you can just see this. In fact, I'm going to do a little changeroo on my CSS real quick. I'm going to change this dark border color. The border, by the way, was essential in order for me to demonstrate what the 100 view height was doing. If I didn't have that border, you wouldn't really see what was going on. But let me make that border a little bit more obvious. This good old yellow green. I got to spell green properly. There it is. There we go. And you can see now that the border on this web page is filling up my viewport. Of course, it's naturally filling up the width because the body of the page is a block element. It naturally will be as wide as it can be. However, because body is a block, it doesn't know how tall to be. It would shrink up on itself. Let me give you an example of that. If I did not have min height of 100 VHs, the body of my page is only as tall as its content. If there was no content, it would shrink up on itself. Since I have a little bit of content, it's a little bit tall. If I had more content, it would be taller. If I had a ton of content, it would be super long, multiple pages, in fact. So basically what I'm doing is I'm forcing the body of the page to be at least as tall as the visitor's device. And remember, if my device is smaller, you don't have to do this part, okay? I just want to demonstrate this. But if I was on a mobile device, let's say an iPad, okay, well, I can still see where that body is. And if I was on an iPhone 10, I can still see where that border is, that body height is. I'm going to leave it there for a moment. And I'm going to put in height 100 VHs. Basically, I'm ensuring that the body is at least as tall as the device viewport. Okay, so I know that's really long, but I don't want to do word wrap, but min height 100 viewport heights. And so now when I'm looking at this on a mobile device like an iPhone, I can see that that lime green, that yellow green border fills it up nicely. If I switch, well, in fact, if I change this out to landscape, still that border is filling it up nicely. Change this out to an iPad, landscape, always fills it up nicely. If I get out of here and I just go back to desktop mode, there we go. That border is filling it up nicely. That's what I'm looking for. And it's actually a very common thing to do to start off a web page, ensuring that we fill up that device window. This also makes it easier. We're not going to do this today, but if I wanted to center something right in the middle of my web page, regardless of the device, I could do that. I could put a logo right there in the middle. And now that I have these boundaries of the viewport, width and height, I know that I can put it right in the center, not just center horizontally, but centered vertically. So that's used quite a bit and probably not a bad thing to do. Now, it is important, by the way, that I'm using min height. If I did height, I could run into problems because if the device is small, like a small phone, then I may make my page so small that content will go outside of those boundaries and they wouldn't be seen. So I am going min height, which means my web page could be taller if it needs to be. Okay, so a little bit of viewport height. Now, by the way, I can see that my web page is obviously working. I got the colors that I want. Cool. I'm happy with that. I'm going to do a little bit of other styling here so far. Nothing too critical. I'm just going to style my headline 1. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm just nothing too shocking, but I'm trying to intentionally do things that I don't feel like I've done lately. Okay. So font weight normal, I know I've used that a couple times. Basically, I'm getting rid of the bold status of my headline. Text transform lowercase, I'm ensuring that my headline 1 is all lowercase letters. Text align right, yeah, I don't do that too often, but obviously we can. Text align left is default. Text align center is an option. I did text align right. I'm only putting borders on the right and the bottom of my headline 1. Okay. And then I'm giving a little padding. Remember, padding is space inside of the border. Margin is space outside of the border. I was satisfied with my spacing outside of the border, but I wanted to create more space inside of the border. And of course, if this was a really big number, we would have really big padding. Okay. There we go. Pretty happy with that. So that's all I'm going to do with that headline. But now I want to start styling my nav menu. So if you didn't style your headline 1, perfectly okay. Not important for today. If you didn't do all this stuff on the body, that's okay too. Not important. However, if you only follow along with some of the stuff that I'm demonstrating here, I would definitely like you to follow along with this part, because now we're going to be styling this navigation menu. The HTML for it is a little bit more complicated than it was a couple days ago because I'm throwing in this unordered list scenario. So let me start to get a little attention on this. I'm going to start off with my nav menu, and I wrote in nav hashtag main menu. That corresponds to my nav tag ID main menu. So that's the way I'm writing that one, because I want to style that menu. And just so you can really see that that's what I'm messing with, I'm going to put a border. That's fine. I'll do a light color. It'll stand out on that dark background. I'm going to give it a nice big margin too, 80 pixels. So by giving it a really obvious border, let me put the margin on its own line, a really obvious border and lots of margin, it's going to be much easier to see where that nav main menu is. And you can tell definitely it's an unordered list because it's got the little bullets over there. Perfectly normal. And by the way, what I'm getting my inspiration from is over at Apple, they got a navigation bar right up there at the top. Now, I'm not doing a sticky nav. We did that before, but same basic concept. We have a navigation menu up here. And this navigation menu is created using an unordered list. You can just barely see it. I know it's really tiny up here, but you can see that I've got all these list item tags. This is on the Apple navigation menu. And you can kind of tell right here. So the one I'm hovered over in the top right corner is for the store. And if I look over at the menu over on the actual menu, I can see that store is highlighted. The next one is for the Mac. And then I've got the iPad right there. Those are list items, which means it's part of a list. Now, at a glance, we don't know if it's an unordered list or an ordered list. So I'd have to scroll up a little bit higher. And there it is. It's the unordered list. So they're using an unordered list to create the navigation menu at the Apple website. Now, something else we can learn from this is I see this little indicator that it's Flex. They're using Flexbox. Pretty cool idea. I like that a lot. So they're using Flexbox in order to create that horizontal navigation menu. And of course, then they've got a div and stuff like that. Now, are they using a nav tag? They may not be. It looks like instead of using a nav tag, they're using a div tag. Div is a generic block element, perfectly fine. The nav tag was designed so that we wouldn't have to use the div tag for this purpose, but the folks over at Apple have decided to go the old school method with a div tag. That's cool. Just so you can see that there's multiple ways to do it. Now, of course, if I look at their nav menu, this doesn't look anything like a bulleted list. So what we want to do is make our navigation menu look a little bit more like Apple's navigation menu. Let's try it. So for my nav menu, well, let me look at it on my page first. So, okay, so that's what we've got going on. I'm going to do these in stages. And what I'm going to do is jump down here to nav, main menu, space, unordered list. I want to style the unordered list that's within my main menu. The unordered list contains my 3 list items. And let's see, I will, let's do something really quick and obvious. List style type none, which is going to get rid of the pesky bullets. Get rid of those pesky bullets. List style type none, and my bullets are gone. They were over here on the far left. Now you don't see them at all. Okay, it's good to know. The other thing we can do here is display flex. Which converts our unordered list into a flex parent. I should write flexbox parent. Sounds a little better that way. It's a flexbox parent. Now, making our unordered list a flexbox parent is going to have an interesting effect. It puts our list items side by side. It would help, at least temporarily, if we could see our list items. So the unordered list has a couple of declarations. List style type none to get rid of the bullets, and display flex to make it a flexbox parent, which by default has the effect of putting the children in a row, even though they're block elements. Nav menu. Part of me is tempted to make my font a little bit bigger on my screen, but I kind of don't want to because I can fit more stuff on there. But if you want to send me a quick chat, even a private one, just say, hey, Ralph, could you make that font a little bit bigger? Let me know and I will happily do so. I kind of want to keep my folders displayed too for something we're going to do here in a minute. But so far, definitely want you to get these declarations down for your unordered list. Now, by the way, the list style type none, that could have been put down here as well on the list item. Either it works in either place. Now for my list items, I'm going to do this. Border 2 pixels, solid red. I want to at least put borders on these list items so that you can really see what they look like. And you cannot see what they look like. Why can't you see what they look like? It looks like. Oh, I've got a mistake. Can anybody tell what my mistake happens to be? Wrong ID tag, thanks. Yep. So I want to put a border on my list items. I go to my web page, and of course, there is nary a border to see. So clearly I've got a typo in there. And yep, I just did nav menu instead of main menu for my ID reference. Thank you. Now I'm going to have borders. Now with those red borders, it's a little bit easier to see them side by side. What's making those list items side by side, of course, is display flex. If I didn't have display flex, then those list items would be one on top of the other, vertically oriented. Notice my list items also take up as much width as possible. List items are block elements. Blocks like to be as wide as they can be, filling up the parent width. So that was one way. I just used this display flex to get those list items side by side. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, but I'm going to go a step further. Nav hashtag main menu space A. I want to manipulate the anchor tags that are within my list items. And I think what I'm going to do here is padding 16 pixels top and bottom, 24 pixels left and right. And while I'm here, that's declaration none. And while I'm here, I'll put this on the next line. I do like to put some declarations together on the same row, but only if they're kind of very closely related. Text declaration none. Text align center. I think that's good. Yeah, not too bad. Now, unfortunately, the padding that I picked, top and bottom, isn't working here. It's kind of hard to notice, but I can tell you that I'm not getting 16 pixels of padding. This will make it really obvious. What if I had 50 pixels of padding, top and bottom? Doesn't look any different. So the padding on the top and the bottom of my anchor tags isn't doing anything for me. What about the left and right? What if that was 90 pixels left and right? That's working, kind of. Looks a little bit messed up, but it's doing something, that's for sure. So my padding top and bottom is not working for these anchor tags. There's a remedy for that. Some declarations, some CSS properties work differently for block elements than they do for inline elements. If my anchor tags were block elements, it would work. So something I might do to my anchor tags sometimes is display them as block, not inline block, but block. Now, by displaying my anchor tags as a block element, I'm converting their normal inline status to block status, which means I get that big top and bottom padding. Well, that's more than I want. So I'm going to dial that 50 down to 16, and it looks a little bit more reasonable. Now, I'm also zoomed in quite a bit on my page. So let me just zoom out to 110%. So now I've got these big chunky anchors. There's even a reason that I'm using padding as opposed to something like width and height or other methods, although width and height would actually work out pretty well too, I think. I want anywhere in this button to be the clickable zone. I don't want the user to have to click on the text, but they can click anywhere within that list item. Remember, my list item is the red bordered item. They can click anywhere in there and activate that hyperlink. That's kind of what I want. I want a nice big chunky target. If this was going to be for a mobile device, we'd want to make sure that the user had at least maybe 48 or 50 pixels of width and height. You don't want a button to be too small, especially on a phone, because you want a person to be able to tap on it with their finger. Now, based on the numbers I've got, I'm probably in pretty good shape, because if there's 24 padding left and right, that's a minimum of 48, plus we have the text. So that's really big. And then of course I have 16 top and bottom, that totals 32 of padding, plus we have the height of the text. You know, maybe the height of my text is about 16 pixels, which is pretty standard default size for text. So we got the 32 plus the 16, that gets me to like 48. Yeah, so that's pretty good right there. Yeah, nice big chunky buttons, whether I'm using a mouse or if I'm using my finger on a phone. All right, feeling pretty good about that. I want to move these buttons a little further apart from each other. I'm going to do that with my list item. So for my list item, I'm just going to put a little bit of margin, 4 pixels, just enough to get those buttons a little bit of separation. I want those list items to have a little bit of separation from each other so they don't look so cluttered. And then I'm also going to do this. Nav hashtag main menu a:hover. Background color FFC, which is a light shade of yellow. Foreground color 234, which is a dark bluish gray. So when I hover over the anchors within my main menu, the background color for those anchors, those hyperlinks, is going to change. So when you're styling navigation menus, very often you're going to have 4 rules, okay? Technically, I guess I have 5 rules here. So 4 main rules, and then you might have some extraneous ones. So the 4 rules are controlling the actual nav, controlling the unordered list, controlling the list item, controlling the anchors. And then you can add on a couple more, like the hover state of the anchors. There's also the active state of the anchors, like when the user is actually clicking. I'll do that one too in a little bit. Otherwise, I'm feeling pretty good about this navigation menu. And when I hover over it, I see those colors change. Same basic concept they're doing over at Apple. On Apple, they're not changing the background color, but they're clearly changing the text color. By default, the hyperlink text is what I'm trying to say, is a very light gray, almost white. But when I hover, the text brightens up and changes to white. So it's a very subtle effect, but that's what they're doing. Now, when I click, they're not doing anything there when I click. So they're not doing anything on the active state. However, let's check this out real quick. Nope, they're not doing anything there either. So I was trying to see if they were indicating what page I was on in an active kind of zone. Let's see if I can't find an example of that real quick. Yeah, it's a pretty subtle, but not kind of what I was looking for. Let me find something a little more obvious. How about Microsoft? Nope, that's not a good example either. All right, I might call this, let's see what happens here. I'm going to websites that have really big menus, so it's not really demonstrating what I want to. So I'll just have to kind of describe it. We'll demonstrate it. We'll get it figured out though. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with this nav menu and how it looks. Cool. Now, what I want to do next is I want to create 2 new web pages to go along with this particular web page. So what I'm going to do is go to my HTML file. I'm going to press Control A to select all. Control C to copy. I'm copying everything on the web page. I'm going to create a new web page. Control V as in Victor to paste. And then I'm going to do File, Save As. And I'm going to call this one Menu 2, Week 5, Menu 2. Okay, got that one. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to open up a new blank file. Control V as in Victor to paste. File, Save As. And this one is going to be Menu 3, Week 5, Menu 3. And let me take my CSS and move it over to the right. And so now I've got 3 web pages. I've got Week 5, Menu 1, Week 5, Menu 2, Week 5, Menu 3. And you can just kind of see them over here in my, what do they call that? My Explorer pane as well. Menu 1, Menu 2, and Menu 3. Now I'm going to go to each one of these, and I want to do something that kind of stands out though. So in my headline 1, do I want to do it there? Yeah, that's fine. Height symbol, page 1. So basically, I'm putting in an indicator in the headline 1 that I'm going to be on page 1. It's right there. I'll do the same kind of thing on page 2. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing on page 3. So each of my web pages is almost identical, almost, but not 100% identical. The headlines are a little different. The navigation menus are all the same. The styling is all the same. If I were to look at this on my browser, cool. Notice I'm on page 1, but if I click on my nav menu button for page 2, I go to page 2. Page 3, now I'm on page 3. Back to page 2, back to page 1, page 3, page 1, page 2, page 1. We've got ourselves a little mini website. It's 3 web pages. The code is practically identical, but they are 3 different pages with 3 different headlines. definitely want you to get that part. So just so you know, there's the entire body of my page. In fact, I'm going to copy that, put it in the chat. That's my page 3, by the way. But my page 2 and my page 1 look just the same. Any questions about this so far? About this navigation menu on this little baby 3-page website? Okay. Does everyone have the markup? You've got the HTML for the basic page, the CSS for the menu. A couple more things we're going to do with this. Okay, so basically I've got this little nav menu. I can jump around to different pages. What I want to have happen though is regardless of the web page I'm on, I want to know by looking at the navigation menu what page I'm on. I can tell by looking at the headline I'm on page 3, but I want to be able to just glance at the navigation menu and see that I'm on page 3. Or I want to glance at the menu and see that I'm on page 1 now. I want the nav menu to always be styled to whatever web page I happen to be on. So let's take care of that. Now to do that, I'm going to be editing a little bit on each of my 3 web pages. I'm on page 1 right now. On page 1, I'm going to go to the body of this page, and I'm going to put in ID equals PG1 for page 1. I'm going to go to my page 2, the body tag, and put ID equals PG2 for page 2. And then on page 3, you know what I'm going to do? Body tag ID equals PG3 for page 3. And then back to page 1. Okay, so that's the first phase. I'm giving each of my web pages a unique ID. Next, I want to give each of my anchor tags a unique ID. So I'm on page 1. I'm going to do some copying and pasting, by the way, in just a moment. But I'm on page 1. I'm looking at my nav menu. I'm looking at each anchor tag, and I'm going to go to the opening anchor tag. ID equals MI1 for menu item 1. For the second one, ID equals MI2, menu item 2. And the third one is going to be ID equals MI3, menu item 3. Now, instead of typing those over and over again on my other 2 web pages, I'm basically just going to take my nav menu from opening nav tag to closing nav tag. I'm going to select it, Control C to copy it. I'm going to go to page 2. I'm going to select the nav, Control V as in Victor to paste. Go to page 3, select the nav, Control V as in Victor to paste. If you've got 100 web pages on your website and you want each of those web pages to have the same navigation menu, then that's what you do. You have to make sure that each web page has the same chunk of HTML for that navigation menu. There is a better automated way to do this, but for now, that's the way we're doing it. It's not so bad if it's a small website. If it was a 100-page website, I'd show you another technique. But for a 3-page website, a 5-page website, even a 10-page website, just copy and paste that same navigation menu code to each page is a perfectly fine way to go. Okay, so Feeling pretty good about this. However, just putting in those IDs doesn't do anything for me. So here's what I want to do next. I'm going to go to my CSS file. In this section of styles that I'm going to do here, I'm going to style the active page indicator. This is going to be easy and it's going to be complex. It's easy because I've done it a few times. I kind of understand it. And we're not going to type anything that's really big. However, I've done this before in classes, and it can be a tricky concept to absorb and understand exactly what's happening. Now, part of that's my fault because maybe I'm just not explaining it in the best way so that everybody understands it in just 2 seconds. So be prepared that this could be a challenging concept to figure out why it's working. But I'm going to try my best to explain it. We're going to see it work. We're going to do it ourselves. You're going to make it work. And then I think over time, maybe even just a little bit of time, you will start to grasp why it's working. So let me go ahead and write something first. I'm going to say that hashtag PG1 space hashtag MI1 curly braces. And I'm going to change this to a background color that is 990. No. DD0. Yeah, kind of a brighter yellow is what I want. And you know what? I'm going to change the foreground color as well. Dark red. I know I'm picking ugly colors. Ooh, maybe I should do that yellow green. I used that before. I'll do that again. I'll make that really dark. 500. Okay. That's all I'm going to do right now. I'm not done, but that's the main concept here. Let's see if it works. So if I jump back over to my web page, now notice I'm on page 1. And of course, my menu item for web page 1 is styled, indicating as such. If I'm on web page 2, there's no styling. Page 3, no styling. Page 1, there is styling. And that's the CSS for it. Here's the concept. Whenever we're in a situation where menu item 1 is a descendant of page 1, then I'm going to get the yellow-green background and the red text. Only when menu item 1 is a descendant of page 1. Only when menu item 1 is within page 1. If I'm on page 2, well, I do have menu item 1, but notice that menu item 1 is not within page 1 when I'm on page 2. It's within page 2, which means we can customize this CSS rule, add to it using the same concept. After menu item 1 here, comma, PG2 space hashtag MI2, comma, hashtag PG3 space hashtag MI3. The styling of the yellow-green background and the red text only occurs when the menu item is a descendant of the page of the same number. Menu item 3 within page 3, menu item 2 within page 2, menu item 1 within page 1. If this was a 5-page menu, then I'd have 5 of those. I've only got 3. If it was a 10-page menu, I'd have 10 of those, not 3. But now that I've got that CSS on there, stick that in the chat. Now that I've got that CSS, I can go to any of my pages and I can see that the menu item is styled appropriately. I still get my hover color on the others, but I can see where my active page is. It's an active page indicator. Okay. Let's try this real quick. I guess I will put this up here. Yeah. Nav hashtag active. Okay. A:\active is another pseudo class relative for my menu, for my hyperlinks. You know, hover makes sense. Active is the motion when you're literally clicking on the button. So by putting this on here, if I go to page 2, now what I'm going to do to demonstrate this, I'm going to click and hold down my mouse button. But when I click and hold down my mouse button, I can see the red and the yellow, the background red and the yellow text, and then I go to that page. It's really fast. It's just that moment when you're just clicking, you just see that little flash of red. So that's the active page styling. If I click and hold, it's a little bit more noticeable. Okay. That's another way that you can style your hyperlinks, especially for your navigation menu items. Now, this is a pretty simplistic demonstration of this. You might think, well, why would you ever do something like that? Well, what if my anchor tag looked like a button? Well, what I might do, can we do this easy enough? I bet we could. What if all of my anchor tags had a box shadow? Box shadow, 3 pixels, 3 pixels, 3 pixels of blur, and let's make it nice and gray, 333. Okay. So all of my anchor tags, actually I should do that on the list items, but you know what I'm going to do? What will I do? I'm going to go to my list items. I'm going to take the border away from that. And I'm going to put the border on my anchor tags. It's not going to have a tremendously different look, but it's going to look better since I decided to put those shadows on there. Doesn't change any of the function. But now, let me do this too, so you can see things a little more easily. Let's go to my nav menu, and I'll put big padding. 40 pixels. Okay. So now you can see that I've got some shadow on those buttons. Let me zoom in some more. You can see I've got some box shadow on those buttons. It makes it look like the buttons are like sticking up. Well, what I could do is on the hover state, on the active state, I can change those box shadows. And if an element is closer to the surface, the shadow is smaller and the shadow is darker. If an item is far away, the shadow is grayer and the shadow is blurrier. If we were in a face-to-face class, I would demonstrate that concept by holding my hand in front of the projector that shines on the screen at the front of the room. And by moving my hand closer and farther away from the projector or from the surface of the board, you would see that effect with your shadow. So you just have to kind of trust me. That's the way it would work. So I'm going to go to my box shadow, and instead of it being 3 pixels by 3 pixels, I'm going to make it 1 pixel by 1 pixel with only 1 pixel of blur. I'm going to make that shadow darker with 111. So instead of my shadow being bigger and blurrier and grayer, it's now denser and smaller and darker, only on active. So when I click on a button, that shadow gets smaller and denser, and it creates an illusion like I'm taking that button and pressing it into the surface of the web page. And of course, we could do something similar, I suppose. I could take that same box shadow, copy that, paste it on my active page indicator styling. So now my active page also, that button also looks like it's pressed in. Okay, let me show you one more thing for this effect. I just like doing this kind of stuff. So this part is just aesthetics. In fact, even that whole box shadow stuff. Let me do this too. On active, position relative, top 1 pixel. Yeah. I'll do the same thing here. Now, what this means is when I click, when I press on that button, not only is the shadow going to get denser and darker and smaller, but the button is going to move downward just 1 pixel. It's not much at all, but it actually helps the effect look better. So now when I click, there's actually a little bit of movement on there so that it just looks more like it's getting pressed in. And so now my pressed in button is just 1 pixel lower than the other buttons. And of course, the shadow is darker and denser and stuff like that. So anyway, I like that effect. And we did some tricky things, but I think what we did really is a whole bunch of simple things all mixed in together. Okay. So, but the key item on this particular phase of our day, boy, this class is going fast. This class always goes fast for me. This is the key concept, though, that I definitely want you to get, and that is styling the active page indicator on a navigation menu. Okay. Now, in order to get that to work, remember, on our web page, each of our anchor tags has an ID, and the page itself has an ID. Each page is uniquely identified, and each menu item is uniquely identified. Any questions? Okay. All right, next order of business. Let's do this a little bit quicker. So I'm going to focus our attention a little bit here. Let's see. I want to go to R. Phillips. I'm going to go there, then there, then there. And I'm going to post a web address. There's the images folder that you can go to. And in fact, just get one image. You can get others, obviously, if you want. But here's the one that I'm going to use to demonstrate with. I'm already changing my mind. I love changing my mind. So yeah, socialicons.png. Yeah, grab that image. I really like the star button one too, but get the social icons. The social icons one will add just a little bit of extra complexity to what I want to do next. So I think that'll be good for learning. By the way, what we're going to be doing next is called, they're called sprite images, basically. And a lot of websites do this, but it's a way that let's see, how can I show, let's see, let me explain it this way. I'm going to do this. It looks like I've already closed some things earlier that I was going to show. So just trust me on this one, but I'm going to head over to Amazon.com real quick. And I'm going to look at inspector, and I'm going to look at this cart image right here. I'm just doing a little bit of quick research. Going there. I'm going to grab this, copy that, do there, over there. There we go. Okay, so what you're looking at right now, I know it's tough to see, but this is one of the many sprite images or master images that Amazon uses. I know it's tough to see because there's a lot of white content on a gray background, but there's the Smile Amazon, which they do for their charitable work. There's Amazon Fresh, which is, their grocery delivery. We got Prime in different sizes. I've got hamburger icons. So there's 3 little lines there, little hamburger icons. Got the little search magnifying glass. I got the shopping cart little icon. There's a couple shopping carts. I got the little location service, the little username. So I've got all of these various little images. Now, if you look around on the Amazon website, well, there's the shopping cart right there. Over here on the left is the Amazon. If I was at smile.amazon. Oh, I guess I got to sign in. Hold on, let me sign in. Continue. There we go. So there's Amazon Smile, Prime, more logos and stuff like that. So basically, Amazon is using this master image. I'll show you another one that they use too. If I go there, click on that. Click on that. over there, over there, over there. Okay, so this image, obviously you can see, has a bunch of little country icons. It's also got, you see that little orange, it's got these little orange radio buttons there. So basically on the Amazon site, somewhere those little orange buttons exist. Well, they may not be on every page, but at some point they must have those and they'll use them from time to time. So basically this whole concept is that we have one image, but we're only looking at a portion of this master image. So when I'm logged into Amazon, I see the little US flag and they're showing me the little portion right there. There's a little US flag right there. I can only see that portion of an image. So the concept here is we're only looking at one small piece of a larger image. All the big websites do this. YouTube does it too. Apple used to use it quite a lot, but they've kind of gotten away from it, but they used to use it quite a bit. So that's what I want to do here. Now, the image I asked you to get was this social media icons image. And it's got obviously, what is that? That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I don't know what that symbol there is, the little W. It's got Pinterest and YouTube. What's that W? Anybody know that W? Is that WhatsApp? No, probably not, right? Anybody know the little W? WK maybe? VK? All right, now it's going to be a quiz question. What does that stand for? Okay, so I've got this master image of all of these social media icons, but I would like to rig a navigation menu where I can only see 4 of them. I only want to see Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I only want to see those 4. So here's what we're going to do. Go to your page 1, your menu 1. Let's tinker with it here. Create a new nav, ID equals, let's call it sprite nav. There we go. Our sprite nav is going to have an unordered list. There's going to be a list item. Anchor, make it a dummy hyperlink. And this is going to be, what do I want to do? I can't remember the order. Actually, the order doesn't matter, but I'll do Instagram, copy that, paste, paste, paste. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If I can't get all of what I want to show you here during class time, I'm going to stick around and keep doing it. Okay. So when we get to like 2:15 p.m., if you need to take off or head out, rest easy. I'm going to keep the recorder on and I'm going to keep doing this because I want to do all 4 of them. But I think I might focus my attention on one of them completely just so you can see how that works. And then I'll build up and I'll do the other 3. Okay, so I've got this menu here, unordered list. It's in my sprite nav. Now, because it's in a different nav with a different ID, if I go back to my page, it looks pretty plain, looks pretty boring. Okay, it's down there in the lower left. Let's size it like that. It looks just like a generic unordered list with some hyperlinks because I haven't styled it very dramatically, but I do want to style it. I've got 4 of these. I want to style them in a 2x2 grid, but I only want 4. Okay, so I need to get these list items in a 2x2 grid. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to, do I need to do some research first? I'm going to do some quick research. Bear with me on this, but I'm going to go back to this original image, if I can find it. Social icons, let me right click. Let me copy that. Earth and view. You don't have to do this part, but this image is, oh, of course the numbers are wacky. This image is 381 pixels wide and 509 pixels tall. Now, the reason I need to know that is because it's going to help me tremendously if I know what the basic dimensions are of one of these social media icons. So I'm going to bust out the calculator here. The width of this image is 381. 381 divided by 3 gets me to 127. I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay. Mental note. Actually, I guess it's a literal note. Now the height. So the height of this image is 509 pixels. And I'm going to divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4. And I get 127.25. Hey, actually, that's pretty nice. It's pretty much a square, 127 square. Height of 127 pixels. Excellent. So that's going to be good information for us to know. Each of these little icons is about 127 by 127, which means if we size our anchor tags to 127 by 127, it should fit perfectly for one of these icons. Cool. Got that information. Close that, back over here. Okay, so I need to start styling this sprite nav. The HTML is pretty good, although I should do this. ID equals IN for Instagram. ID equals TW for Twitter. ID equals FB for Facebook. ID equals YT for YouTube. Since each of these anchor tags is going to be showing a different portion of that master image, I need to give each of my anchor tags a unique ID. So ID equals Instagram, you got it. And then all the others. I'm going to copy this, pop it in the chat. Okay. So now for the styling, I'm going to jump over to my CSS file. All right, what is it called again? I already forgot. It's called Sprite Nav. Nav hashtag Sprite Nav. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay. I'm going to do border 8 pixels solid white, big margin, 40 pixels, so it kind of separates itself. I'm going to set the width to be 254 pixels. Any guesses on why I'm doing 254? Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with this. However, I'm probably gonna tweak it just a little bit here. I'm gonna go right into nav hashtag sprite nav unordered list. I'm gonna take my unordered list and give that a border 4 pixels solid and red, medium red, margin 20 pixels. And I'm going to take the width of 254, height of 254. I'm going to cut that from there, pop it in there. So I'm going to control the width of my unordered list, the width and height of my unordered list. Remember, my unordered list is a block element. It naturally wants to be really wide, but I'm making it specifically 254 by 254, which happens to be 127 times 2. So if each of my icons is 127 pixels, 2 of them side by side is about 254 pixels. I might have to tweak that a bit. We'll find out. And just doing that is going to change the appearance of that unordered list quite a bit. Okay. While I'm here, list style type none gets rid of the bullets. So now I don't have any bullets on that unordered list. Feeling good about this. Display flex. I want the unordered list to be a flexbox parent. Nav, hashtag, sprite nav, list items. Now I'm going to style the list items that are within my unordered list. I'm going to set the width to be 127 pixels and the height to be 127 pixels. Yeah, it seems pretty good. So that we can see them, border 2 pixels solid 909 purple. I want to be able to visualize those 4 menu items, but they look pretty messed up. So I need to do this. Flex flow, row wrap. Let's see if that solves my problem. Not quite, but I think I'm getting there. And let me change this to like 256 and 256. I'll explain why I'm doing that in just a moment. Hold on. Should be getting there pretty soon. There we go. That'll work. And then I'm also going to take these list items and put a little margin on them. That screws that up. So let me add a little more space. If I was really good at math, I would be adding all these up to get the right numbers. Perfect. There we go. Whew. Okay. So ultimately, all of this CSS, just put in the chat, all of this CSS is used to get these little list items in a little 2x2 grid. So basically, each of my list items is 127 by 127. Cool. Makes a nice little square. However, because I gave them a border of 2 pixels, 2 pixels on the left, 2 pixels on the right for each of them, that adds another 8 pixels or so of width. And I also gave them some margin because of all those extra numbers I threw in there. Then I needed to make my parent unordered list a little bit bigger to accommodate them. I want to make sure that my unordered list is big enough to accommodate those 4 menu items. Now, if I truly want these items to be 127 by 127, I might end up allocating extra width and height for that border of 2 pixels, but I think that border is going to be temporary. I'm probably going to end up getting rid of that border. So I think I'm pretty happy with this for now, but I now have a 4x4 grid. However, the anchor tags, nav, sprite nav, anchors. Each of the anchor tags is going to be display block. They're going to have a width of 100%, and a height of 100%. The anchor tags are in the list items. I want the anchor tags to fill up and fill in the list item. So if my anchor tags are 100% wide and 100% tall, then they are going to fill up the list item. Remember, my list item is 127 pixels wide and 127 pixels tall. My anchor tags will not be bigger than the list items. You don't notice much of a difference here, but now if I hover over any part of my Twitter button, I get the link to where that Twitter would be if I had an actual hyperlink. So now these 4 anchors are complete squares that are filling up the list items, which are squares. And those 4 list items are inside of the unordered list, which is a square. The anchors are displayed as block, and I've set their width and their height to 100% to fill up the list item. The anchor's parent is the list item, 127 by 127, which is basically the size of each of those icons. The border is there so that we can short-term see them in action, margin just to give them some separation and space. For the unordered list, which is the parent of the list items, it's a flexbox parent. And then flex flow row wrap allows them to go in a row, but then wrap if necessary, if my unordered list is too narrow, which in this case, it's set up that way. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. I'll definitely want you to practice this a few more times. We're not done. I got a little bit more time to show some things. We're still working on this, but I know I just threw a bunch of information at you. However, this stuff is done a lot. We will be doing more of this, by the way, because this whole display flex and flex flow and getting grids to reshape, that's going to be really big coming up when we're doing web page layouts that we want them to morph and change. Okay. The technique I'm using here is very, very similar to what you might see over at like a site like Apple, where they have content. Look at this chunk here. We have AirPods, HomePods, Watch, iPad mini, and they're in a grid pattern, two, and then they got two more things, iCard. And so they're using the exact same Flexbox technique. But of course, they're using it on a scale that's much bigger, whereas ours is limited to this little chunk right over here. Whew, okay, now for this Instagram photo. So what I want to do is for all of my anchor tags that are within that sprite nav, I want them to use the same background image. Background image, URL, that slash, images slash. Oh, you know what? Did I not save it in there? I thought I did. I may never have saved it. Let me make sure I do that. So let's see. Let me jump back over to my browser. Social media icons, right click, save image as. Oh, I've got it in a different area. I need to put it over here. 195 images. There it is, social icons. Okay, done and done. Social icons. Background, repeat, no repeat. Perfectly fine. I think I'm just going to leave everything else at the default. Let's see how this looks. There it is. Now, I want you to ignore most of this. However, you can start to notice that clearly the background image is working. And what I'm seeing is the Instagram icon behind all of these. Cool. Well, by default, when you put a background image on an element that's too small for it, what you end up seeing is the top left corner. Well, I don't want to see her. I'm gonna be focusing my attention on Twitter. Okay, so I'm gonna do the Twitter one. Now for Twitter, I don't want to see the top left corner. I want to see the top middle. So I need to reposition this background image. It's kind of like if there's a giant billboard just outside your window. Your window is this big, but the billboard is massive. Now, if that billboard is pressed right up against the window, you can only see a small portion of that billboard at any one time. Now, if the person takes that billboard and moves it one side or the other side, then you're going to see different portions of the billboard. If they move it up and down, you're going to see different portions. That's what we're going to do with this background image. If I reposition the background image left and right and up and down, I'm going to see different icons. So the whole technique for this is repositioning background images to a slightly different location from their default. So I want to see that Twitter one. Now, we could figure out some math, and I'm going to do some educated guessing here. So I'm going to jump back over to my code, and I'm going to focus my attention on nav, sprite nav, a, hashtag TW. The Twitter one. Actually, I'm going to get rid of all that stuff. We don't need that part there. I'm just going to do a hashtag TW for Twitter. I want to focus just my attention on the Twitter anchor tag. Background position. Now, when you do background position, there's two units. There's the X, which is the left, right, and there's the Y, which is the up, down. Now, I don't want to move my background image up or down because it's already looking at the top area. So I don't want to move it up or down. It's actually already where it needs to be. So my Y positioning is going to be 0 pixels. However, I do need to move my background image to the left. Currently, I'm looking at the Instagram photo or the Instagram icon. If I move the whole background image to the left, then I should see the Twitter one. I'm going to move it left, negative 127 pixels. I'm going to move it left, so I use a negative. If I want to move it right, I use a positive number. So now when I go back to my page, I can see I've got that Twitter icon. You see, it's not perfect though. I can see a little bit of white over there. I might need to move it a little bit further. 127 was an educated guess. What if I move it 128 pixels to the left? Now it fills up that space pretty darn nice. Cool. Yeah, so Ryan, good call on that. You might say center. And I kind of like that idea too. The only reason I'm not doing center and I'm using very specific pixel measurements is because I want you to get trained up regardless of what the background image is. You're not always going to get a background image where the icon you want is perfectly in the center. So just think back to these nav menus and these sprite master images like this. So I prefer that you think in pixels versus center, top, middle, that kind of stuff. Oh, yes, good call, Marshall. I do need to change the box sizing if I remove that border. Good point, because remember, I'm using box sizing border box. So even though I've told my list items to be 127 by 127, because of that 2-pixel border, I really only have 125 by 125 of visible space. So what I could do is I can get rid of the borders now. The borders were just there temporarily. So let's see how this looks. That's okay. Let me get rid of those borders and let's see if I need to tweak a little bit now. Thanks for reminding me of that. Cool. So it looks like I can move a couple. Oh, I need to move the Instagram too, but I'm only focused on Twitter right now. So let me take that Twitter image and let's see, what do I need to do? I need to move it back 127, but it looks like I also, yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with a little bit of white trim on there. That's easy to fix later on. But I can also move the image down. So if I want to move it down, I forget, is it 1 pixel or is it -1 pixel or 2 or -2? That's what's great. If you try a number and it's the wrong way, just try the opposite. I'm going to try 2 pixels, see what that does. It moved it down and it looks pretty good. I'm actually might be pretty content with that. I'm going to go up to my list items and I'm going to change their width to 126. And I'm going to move this back to the left, 128. I'm just trying to get a little bit of balance. All right, 125. Ooh, that looks like it good. That looks like it works. Okay, so I changed my list item width to 125 and the height to 127. Now, the reason I'm adjusting these numbers is because my original image, there actually is a bit of white on there, and I'm trying to size my list items. Thus, I'm trying to size my anchors so that I'm only seeing the part of the icon that has the border. So I'm just playing around with these numbers, little trial and error, high, low, just to kind of get the look I'm going for. And I'm focusing my attention only on the Twitter one, because if I feel like I can do the Twitter one, then I should be able to do all the others. It just takes a little bit of tweaking and number shifting. So that I'm pretty happy with that. However, when I hover over the Twitter icon, I want to see the bright blue. I don't want to see the grayed out version. I want to see the bright blue version. So what I'm going to do here, another rule, #TW for my Twitter icon, hover. When I hover over the Twitter icon, background position, I want to see -128 pixels to the left. I know that because that's what the other one was. And then I just need to move it upward. So I think that's going to be probably something like, I'll guess here. Let's try 125 pixels and let's fine tune it from there. So if I go back to my page and I hover over Twitter, oops, I went the wrong way. -125 pixels. Look at that. So I'm hovering over the little Twitter bird, but it's not quite lined up perfectly. So maybe I need to do -127. It's getting pretty good. I feel like I'm seeing balanced white on the top and the bottom, even though I wasn't expecting to. I'm going to reduce the height overall on these. What if I did 125 by 125? And then I can move this up a little bit. 126. Not quite. Did I go the wrong way? Do I need to do 128? Yeah, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not great. I still see my little Twitter bird hopping, which means I'm probably still a pixel off somewhere. So we just have to take some adjusting. Oops, I went the wrong way again. 127, just playing around with these numbers. And what I'm looking at is when I hover over it, do I see that little bird hop around? I'm still seeing it hop around a little bit. So I would still have to play around with these numbers to get them where I think they look pretty darn good. But that's the basic idea. Now I'm going to do one more of these since I still got like 5 minutes of class here. So there's basically the idea for Twitter. Let's try a different one. I'm going to try YouTube, which is all the way in the bottom right. Oh, it's actually there. So I want to start off. I want to show this YouTube icon, the gray one, and then on hover, I'll show the bright red one. So that's my YouTube one. So I'm going to head over to, oops, did I screw that up there? Anchor, hashtag YT for my YouTube icon, background position. Now I can just start off with guessing. I know I have to do a pretty big movement here. So negative 300 pixels. And oh, that's the wrong one. I'll do negative 200 pixels and then negative 300 pixels. Let's see what that does. Okay, I'm actually a little bit close. I can kind of start to see that grayscale YouTube that I really wanted, but I'm not quite moving it enough. So I could do 250. And that's going to start to move that YouTube icon a little bit better. And of course, 254, 127 times 2 is going to get me even closer to what I want width-wise. I'll go a little bit more. Okay, so it looks like the width of the YouTube icon is looking pretty good. Now I just need to move it downward a little more. So I'll try oops, wrong way again. Okay, getting better. Just about there. And I think we're just about good enough. Cool. There's the YouTube one. Now, when I hover over the YouTube, hyperlink, hashtag YT for the YouTube icon, colon, hover. When I hover over that one, background position. Now, the left-right movement is going to be the same, that negative 256. And the up and down is pretty darn close. I just need to move it down a little bit further. So I'll try something like 20px, negative 256 px. See how that looks when I hover over that YouTube. Oh, I must be way off here. So let's see. I need to move it upward even more, but I might be going the wrong way. So I'm going to do a negative 200 to test. I'm changing the wrong number. X, the first one is the horizontal. So that's going to be the same 256. I need to move it up and down. Let's see, I'm trying to follow this question here, Ryan. So is there no way to simplify the hover behavior definitions, like putting colon hover after the first? Sometimes there is. The only thing that's making this a little bit more difficult is that each icon needs a different portion of the background image. If all of my anchor tags were using the same background image, and there's a reason that that might happen, you're going to see it in your quiz coming up, by the way, then it's a lot easier. But because each of these anchor tags is showing a unique portion of the image, got to do it this way. Let me try this. Good news is once you get it down, it's not too bad. Pretty good. Almost there. Good enough. So at least we got the Twitter one and the YouTube one. And of course, it is a bit tedious. It is a little bit inefficient to start off with. But once you have this background image set and you've got the numbers set, then yeah, you lock those in. It's not like you have to change them very often. But then you can use this one image to kind of show different portions and create those different effects. Now, here's an example of something that you might see too. Let me head back over to here. I'm not doing this one, but for instance, the star button one. Now notice there's nothing really unique about each of these stages of this star banner button. So this could be the background image of 10 different hyperlinks, and each hyperlink would show the same background position and movement, which means it would be a lot faster. You wouldn't have to do this individually for each anchor tag. All anchor tags would show equal movement there. And maybe that's the one I'll tinker with here in the little time we have right after class. In anticipation of that, I'm going to go ahead and save this image. And I'm going to save it into my 195 images, star button, cool. So I think what I'll do is I will do this one. Should be pretty easy. I'll give it a shot. But I'm at the 2:15 time. So if you've got to head out, fantastic. That's cool. I'm going to keep the recorder on, keep doing that one. So if you want to hang out for a bit, feel free to do so. If you've got any questions, definitely ask away. And what I'm going to do next is make another navigation menu, but use this background image. It's actually going to be easier using this image than it is using those social media icons, because there's going to be less, I don't have to do it for each individual anchor tag. Just all anchor tags can be equal. And I could have 10 anchor tags, all using the same styling. So that's my page for now. The key skills that I want you to take away from this, of course, is making those active page indicators. Multi-page website and the nav menu will indicate which page I'm on. And of course, taking a background image and repositioning it for use in a navigation menu. So I will publish my page a little bit later, but I want to add that other nav menu to it. I'll probably do it right on this same page here, just down here somewhere. So thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks all. No hard feelings if you got to head out. Just maybe jump back over to the class recording when I post that, and then jump ahead to the last, I don't know, probably just 15, 20 minutes or so maybe. So I will see you folks on 5 days, Tuesday, something like that. Well, I'm reading through this little text question here. YT. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying there. Again, though, the hover states for the YouTube versus the hover states for the Twitter would be different declarations. So that would still throw us off. Oh, Marshall's got the hover states for all of them. Oh, go ahead and throw it in the chat then. Cool. Now, of course, you could even customize this a little bit further too. If your background image was a little bit smaller, remember, you can do a background size and you can resize the background image. And of course, that would affect all of your X and Y coordinates, but you could make those icons look smaller and they would still look pretty good. You would just have to change the little hover states and stuff like that. Cool. Yeah, that's the other thing. I've got text in there, and obviously we don't really need that text. So that text that I had in there for Instagram and Facebook and stuff, I'd probably end up getting rid of that text. All right. Yeah. So just because these numbers worked out well for Marshall doesn't mean you still might not have to tweak them yourself. All depends on the margins, the widths, things like that you've set, the heights, So don't assume that somebody else's markup or styling is going to work perfectly for yours. Okay, so there's a few people hanging out. If you've got a question, just let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to jump over to my HTML on page 1, and I'm going to make another one. Nav ID sprite nav 2. Okay, I'm going to do that little trick here. I want an unordered list, child, parentheses, list item, child A, closing parentheses, times 9. I'm going to do 9 of these. Enter. Okay, so that kind of gives us a little start there. And text doesn't really matter too much. Let me just copy that, and I'm just going to pop in some bogus text. And it would be good if I have at least, I think, some dummy hashtags in there. Let me just take care of that. Okay. Now, what's great about this method is since each of my anchor tags is going to use the same background image and positioning, my anchor tags don't need a unique ID. They can all be treated the same. So they don't need that ID attribute in there. And I think that's going to take care of the HTML for this phase. So now I'm going to jump over to my CSS. All right, I always forget what I call these things. Sprite nav 2, got it. Okay, I'm going to give it another big border, 8 pixels solid, EEE, margin 40 pixels, just to separate it from the surrounding content. That's pretty good. Okay, no worries, Ryan. Take it easy. And you too, good weekend. And then nav hashtag sprite nav 2, unordered list. The style type none to get rid of the bullets. Now these are all going to be in a row, so I really don't even need to do the display flex. I shouldn't say row. They're all going to be in a column shape. I could still do display flex, but not necessary because they're naturally going to be that way. But let me go ahead and do this. Border 4 pixels, solid, not red. I'm going to set their heights to, I don't know yet, 100 pixels, and their width to 200 pixels, and a little bit of margin on there, 4 pixels. That should be enough. You know what? I'm screwing this up. This is my unordered list. I meant to do this for my list item. So nav, sprite nav 2, list items. And basically, I wanted these to be for the list item, not the unordered list. And that should actually give me something that I can visualize. There they are. Those widths and heights are not going to be correct, but I think for now, that's pretty good. And I can see them all in there. Great. I'm going to come back to those. Nav hashtag sprite nav 2 anchors. Display block, width 100%, height 100%. Yeah, that should be fine. So now if I hover over any of these, I've got my hyperlink status. I don't have to hyperlink, or I don't have to hover over the actual text. I can hover over any part of that big red button. Remember, the big red button is the list item, and my anchor tag is filling up that list item space because my anchor tags are now block elements, and they are 100% of the width of their parent, and they're 100% of the height of their parent, and my anchor's parent is the list item. On the HTML, the anchor has a parent, and the parent is the list item. The list item has a parent. The parent is the unordered list. The unordered list has a parent. The parent is the nav. Does the nav have a parent? Sure, it does. The body is the parent of the nav. Okay, so that part is looking pretty good. Now I need to kind of study my image for a moment here. Now this image is insanely big. I'm going to be using a smaller version of this image. So I should have my little measure tool. There's some great add-ons. I've kind of using a new browser here. I wonder how quickly I could install this. Hold on, let's find out. Chrome add-on, measure it. Let's do this one. Now I'm using the Opera browser. Oh, it doesn't have a very good rating. Let's see, what about measure it? How's that one? Yeah, it's a little bit better. I'll do this one, add to Opera. Okay, I'm gonna add an extension. So I'm adding a browser extension, which I haven't used a lot lately, but it does come in handy. I've used it a lot before, but I'm using the Opera browser now. And so I'm still building it up a little bit. So now I've got this little extension. Now this extension comes in handy. It allows me to basically display something on the web, like this Rotten Tomatoes website. I can turn on my little measure it tool. Where'd it go? Oh, I need to do this, I guess. Hold on, let's see, measure it, let's pin it. Okay, now I can go to my little measure it add-on, and then I can draw. So if I'm curious how tall the Rotten Tomatoes banner is, I can draw a box over that, and I can see that it's 91 pixels tall. So it's probably 90 pixels tall. And then the whole width of this, by the way, let me try that again. So Rotten Tomatoes has a banner that's 90 pixels tall and 1100 pixels wide. So if I was trying to mimic this, that's a quick way that I can look at it and say, okay, now I know that 90 pixels is the way to go. And if I was curious about how big the footer section is, I could do the same kind of thing. I could draw that out. It's 160 pixels tall, 327 pixels wide, or 160 pixels tall. The width, of course, changes to the 1100. Great. So that's a little measure it add-on. Now I can use that feature to look at an image. Do I still have it? There it is. Now, if I use my measure it here, I can tell that these little star banners are pretty darn big. They're like 580 pixels wide. That's way big for a navigation menu. So what I might do first is zoom out of it to what I think looks good. That's a little too small. I'll go to that size right there. I use my measure it again. And now if I look at this, my button is going to be, oh crap, that gets, I thought that the zoom out might work there. So that's a bummer. I would have to load that into image editor and do it there. So my little measure, it's not helping me in that regard, but I do know that if I scale it down by half, that should be pretty good. So if I go back to normal, even 110, and I look at this banner, I can see that that's about 220 by 580, let's say. So half of 220 is going to be 110, 110 in height. And then half of the 570, what is that? It can be about 275 or so, 280, something like that, maybe 280 wide. That's going to give me some starting numbers to go for. I am going to take this whole background image though and make it smaller so that it's more realistic with what I want to do. All right, so that's what I'm using a little measure it add-on. So cool. So now I've got some information. I'm going to head back over to my code, over to the styling, and I'm going to take all of these anchor tags, give them the same background image. Star button. Okay. Now, background size. I could do a number like 50%. That's not a bad way to go. Or I could do something more specific. Now, if I do a specific number, it's going to include all of this dead space on the left and the right, which is okay. I just have to be prepared for that. So basically, my image starting off is 920 pixels wide. It's pretty darn wide. So if I go half of that, we're talking like, what is that, 460, something like that? No, even more. That's like 560. So that's maybe 480. I can't do the math. So 450, 460. Yeah, 460. So 460 wide. That still might be wider than I want, but I could do something like background size, 460 pixels. That's it. That's going to make that image smaller. And then I will go ahead and do background repeat. No repeat. Let's see what we've got. So let me escape out of there, back over to this page. And you can start to see what I've got going on. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a real transparent background. I didn't test this. I just grabbed this image before class. And so you can see I've got that checkerboard. Just pretend that doesn't exist. It just happens to be the way I got it. Now, the height of my list items is actually pretty darn close. It needs to be a little taller. So I'm going to go to my list items. And instead of a height of 100, I'm going to try a height of 110. And I want my list items to be tall enough that I can kind of see that full star banner. I'm just adjusting those a bit. That's pretty darn close. It's probably not too much more. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Now I need to move them over to the left. So I need to take my anchors and have a background position. I'm going to move it over to the left, negative 40 pixels, but I'm not going to change the up and down, the Y. And I'm going to see if I can get that star over there to the left. Getting closer. Oh, it's pretty good. Not too bad. Not quite, almost there. Yeah, that's not too shabby. I'll go just a little bit more just so you can see there's some space around it. Okay, so I've got that phase. Now I need the list item to be wider so that it accommodates kind of the whole banner. So I'm going to adjust that width to, let's try 300, see how that looks. Oh, actually looks pretty good. Cool. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So now each of my menu items is showing that same background image. Next order of business is I want to rig it so that my hyperlink text is over this portion of the button. That's actually a little bit of a factor I didn't really take into consideration. So I'm going to do some stuff to try to manipulate those a little bit. But basically, I'm going to mess around with my anchor text, which is my anchors. A couple things I can do right away is I can set the color of the text to be light because it's on a dark background. And then I can set the text decoration none. All right, so now the text is white over there, but I need to move the text over and down. I'm going to try this first. Line height, and I'm going to pick a line height that is about 124 pixels, which is the height of my list item. Cool. So my text looks like it's pretty close to where I might want vertically. I need to move it over. Here's a little trick I'll do for that. Text indent, 100 pixels. All right, let's go a little bit more. 150. Not bad, not bad. I'll dial it back a little bit. 130 pixels. Text indent is like first line indent. It's basically just creating some extra space to the left of the text. I'm going to dial back that line height a bit. See how it looks there. And I'm just trying to get what looks to me to be kind of like a vertical centering. And I'm using the gradient on there just to kind of to draw my eye. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just trying to get it so it looks neat at a glance. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to move my text indent a little bit. I'm going to make my font a bit bigger too. See how that looks? Yeah, I think this looks fine. I'm going to move my line height down, increase my text indent, and I'm going to call that good. Okay, so I'm happy with the text location over the button that I happen to be using. So notice I don't have to create 9 of these. I'm only creating one rule that's controlling all of this anchor. And of course, one rule for that list item, got the width and the height. Pretty happy with that. Now, when I hover over this image or hover over this button, I do want to change out that little star image. So for instance, right now, I'm looking at the greenish blue version. But what if I want to see the yellowish red version down at the bottom? Well, that means I need to take the background image and shift it upward. Okay, which means nav hashtag sprite nav2 hover. Excuse me. Okay, so when I hover over this background position, now I don't need it to move left and right because I'm already good for that. So I'm going to say 0 pixels. Actually, I take it back. I did move it. -83 is what I have for my anchors. I need that to be the same. So my X is going to be the same as it is by default. So -83 pixels space. Now here's where the up and down positioning gets a little bit weird. I want to move this background image upward. So I'm going to use a negative. And then what number do I use? Well, it's a pretty big image and I could do trial and error. Of course, we could educate ourselves a little bit, I suppose, by measuring and taking half of that and stuff, but I'm just going to try a number. I'll try 300 pixels, -300 pixels. It's going to need to be more, I'm sure. And when I hover over this, actually, a little bit less. It's coming out pretty good. There's the yellow and red that I want. I forgot, it didn't make my image smaller by setting its size. So let's try -250. Ooh, it's almost quite perfect. Okay, I'm moving it up a little bit too high. -252. Oops, I went the wrong way. I always get those the wrong way. 48. Try 47, or I'll try 46. And 47. Let's refresh. There we go. Looks pretty good. So you see the little checkerboard moving, but remember, if that was truly a transparent background on this ping image, then you wouldn't even notice that little checkerboard. What I'm looking at is when I hover over, I just see the shifting star from green, blue to yellow, red. And so that's basically using the same background image for each of these 9 menu items. And of course, what's nice about this system is that, all right, I've got 9 menu items. What if I had more menu items? Adding more menu items doesn't really change anything because all of my menu items are getting that same exact styling. The difference, of course, is on my social media icons, the different portions of the background image were custom: Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube. But on this particular background image, they're plain, they're blanked out. So it's the text of the anchor which gives them customization, not this part. So a little bit easier to work with if you're using the same background image for all of them. Okay, so I think that's all I really wanted to show you there. I just wanted you to see a slightly different take on this particular way to go. So Peter, Lupita, Kelsey, hopefully you got something out of that. I am going to publish this, of course. I'll probably do that after I turn off the recorder because I need to customize. I need to update my index page too. Any follow-up questions from what we did today or even just a few minutes ago? Okay, cool. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Oh, okay, Kelsey, well, hold on for a second. I'll hang out with you for a bit and we'll see what's going on. But I will go ahead and stop recording. So I'm going to turn off the recorder right now.